Good morning, everybody. This is Monica Graves, and today is Mindset Monday. So I hope that your Monday is starting out great today. I was just telling Autumn that it's -9 degrees here, and I hope you're all staying warm. You're probably not everybody's in Colorado, but we had some snow finally, and finally our temperatures got to where we're used to. It's been very warm here. But anyway, today I would like to have a discussion on storytelling. So, storytelling is a great mindset that you can use when you are showing people properties, but also when you're listing properties as well. And the best thing that I found about storytelling is it puts people into that same visualization that you want them to be in. And so if you have, a positive story to tell, then you definitely should be using storytelling because storytelling, what I have found personally, is just a way to connect. And when you connect with them, when you find something that's in common or you find something that they can understand, then you're putting them on the same level where you are. And it's always good. It's always good just to have, some kind of uh, lifestyle story that you can talk about, or it could be something with negotiations that you want to discuss with them. But um, but we're gonna get into this. Let me get the PowerPoint up here and hold on, let me share. Okay. And get a slideshow. Huh, it's not working today. Well, I know that you guys can probably see. Here we go. All right. So I just want to make sure everybody can see the PowerPoint I've got here going on. But it's storytelling and how it can be one of the most powerful service tools that you have in real estate. And really, like I said, what you want to do is you want to build rapport. Um, and why it's so important in 2026 and why it matters is because that connection is really so important. And you're probably wondering, why did I bring this up in a Mindset Monday? Well, what I have found is if your mindset is more positive and there are great stories that you can actually tell for emotion, then that's what I'm talking about. The storytelling can actually really help you when it builds that emotional engagement and that trust. And you can also help to stand out because your stories can be personal, right? Your stories can be things that have happened to you personally in the real estate business, and they people will remember. Okay, they'll remember that story, they'll remember things about you, and stories help people see themselves. It helps them to see themselves in that home. It helps them to see themselves in that, in actually making an offer. So one great story that I can tell you that I use is I always help people to, when they're seeing properties, help them to rate them, compared to the last home that we just saw. How can you rate this on a scale of 1 to 10? So it sort of like helps them to open that up to seeing it. And then you can also help with the description. You can say, well, I know that that home, the last home, you really did like that, and you liked the backyard, you liked the deck, you liked the gas stove, and bring that story into, can you see yourself cooking in this kitchen? And or can you see yourself enjoying this back deck with the fence around the back deck? So what I'm trying to tell you is that when you can help people visualize, because you're visualizing things as well, but storytelling can help them to put themselves in that situation. When it comes to like social media, that as well, storytelling on social media is huge because again, it's this way to move beyond it just being um, the pictures of a home. And so, what you definitely want to do with storytelling here is, help that with whatever that lifestyle is. So, lifestyle has been driving the force for about 10 years now, with us posting videos, with us posting, how we feel about a home. And you can also turn properties, like I said, into experiences, not just posting something. How can you tell a story? Because that story is what is going to help people visualize and see things and feel things. You want people to feel things. Just like you feel um, excited about something, you want your buyer or seller to also feel excited. And that zen or that zeal or that enthusiasm is actually how you want to carry that mindset of, I'm very excited about this. I'm very excited about helping you. This is a big investment for you. Tell me the things that you want in a property. And it's also great to be thinking about who that buyer is for one of your listings, because you can ask the sellers questions like, what was it when you first saw this home? What was it that made you want to buy the home? Okay, so these are a great question to ask when you're at a listing consultation because that seller was a buyer. And if they can tell you their journey, if they can tell you the neighborhood, then what they've experienced, then that's how you can use that storytelling in your social media. And also, like I said, people, you want to connect with people and you don't want them to always just connect to a logo because it's really about who you are. It's about who you and your team are. You can share some behind the scenes moments from certain real estate transactions and how that actually helped you, or helped the buyer or helped the seller. The other thing is talk about your process. What I have found, because I have been using the ninja selling, which is the ninja selling process. It's a structure. It's been around for a really long time. And it's, whenever I take certain actions based on the way that has worked for me, then I see results. And so I talk to the buyer or the seller about your process. Tell them that story. Tell them what happens when they, are working with you as a buyer agent. And also be as authentic as possible because what you want, again, is that humanization of who you are, that awesome authenticity of who you are can help to build that trust and help to build long-term relations. The, visual storytelling is huge right now. You want your photos to look fantastic. You want to take a picture of, that area or that neighborhood. So for a great example, um, I lived in Golden for 25 years. I loved the area of Golden, Colorado, and it was a small little western town. And whenever I would have a listing in Golden, I would always visit the downtown area of Golden because it's very unique and it describes a story of a small community. And so those videos that I did, or the reels and the things that I put together to describe this little town, helped people to see, that it is a small community, smaller size schools. I would tell them stories about how I moved from Atlanta, Georgia, and I looked at all these different areas where I wanted to, raise my kids, and I found Golden, and so that's why I use those stories, but I also use the videos of me, in that town, showing the little town, and then I go and show the home. And then, of course, I show the views because the views sell as well. So that before and after transformations are also huge when you're talking about visual storytelling. Have you ever listed a property? And I mean, I've done a lot of fix and flips, me and my husband have, but we would always do those before. Here's what this house looked like before, and here's what it looked like after, because people could see, oh, they see that, you know, carpet, that shaggy carpet that was in there, and look at what we have done to this property. So what I have done with my listings, if you don't necessarily have to put it um, in, social media or in the listing agreement, you can put like before and after transformations in a little booklet and have that booklet on the counter. Those kind of storytelling are so powerful. You want those buyers to see that, they've done all of this great work on this property. And the other thing that I do is I put the pre-inspection on the counter for the listing as well, because that's a visual thing for people to see, is they look at this inspection report and then they see that all of the items listed there have all been uh, repaired. So you want your audience to feel like this is a house that I could live in. You want, I mean, views, what makes this house special? Think about the buyer, think about what that buyer, who that buyer is, and then also, like I said, the stories that your seller has in reference to the house. Um, you can also put a booklet in the house showing if you're selling in winter and want the buyers to see what summers look like, because where I live now, it's all white, and it's very difficult to show the summertime. So I always ask the sellers, do you have any photos that I can use that show you, out on the boat, on the lake, that show you playing golf, that show you, riding horses, because the area that I live in now is very rural, and I want to describe and help other people see the storytelling about the property. And again, when it comes to that digital marketing, whether you're using, the website or social media, you always want to try to share the narratives of that property. What makes them unique? Um, what makes that neighborhood lifestyle unique to the area? Find something, whether it's a dog park, people, so that people that own dogs know that there's this close dog park. Do some lifestyle storytelling so that people will know more and connect. And then also, I'm a dog lover, so I always talk to people about their dogs. I talk to people about their family, because you can start to tell stories or have them tell stories to you so that you can build that trust. Um, Email marketing. So a lot of times, have you found that, when you send an email or you send a text, that a lot of times they can feel cold, um, or short and brash? And I had this happen to me, that where I was showing homes, and it was, I don't like to answer my phone when I'm showing homes. And so I had a client that was reaching out, and I was texting back, and I was being very short, like with answers of no or yes. I wasn't putting a broad text together that was doing any kind of explanation. And what happened is they texted back and said, "Are you upset with me?" And I said, "No, I'm not upset with you. I'm showing properties. Let me reach out to you later." So from that, I found out that if you are doing these kinds of very sterile text or emails, um, a lot of times people can feel something different from what you really want them to feel, because you're not expressing joy, you're not expressing disappointment, whatever it is. You need to share stories that have meaning, right? That have something that are memorable, and that you're going to be engaging. And what I have found, by doing a lot of these storytelling is, when it comes to email marketing, is a call for action. Something that's going to, you ask a question, or something that's going to open that conversation up, and have that type of mindset that you really want them to have. Because again, storytelling is so, so powerful. Um, when it comes to leads, now, this is where storytelling can help when you are first talking to somebody. Okay, let's say, you know, this is a lead that's coming through, or a lead from your website. You've done really great with your website on storytelling, and people are like, this agent looks like somebody that I would like to work with. So a lot of times we want to have like all this data, that we're showing them. But when you think about the different personalities that are out there, you want to try to figure out, by asking questions, what type of personality that person is. Okay, so there's going to be, the DISC profile. If you've never done the DISC assessment, I encourage you to do the DISC assessment. That's DISC, because the DISC assessment is going to tell you what type of personality that you are, but it also is going to show you how to adapt to these other people's personality. So I'm a high D and a high I, and high D stands for sort of like demanding, I stands for more of influencing, S is like a steady personality, and then C is like somebody that's more compliant and controlling. And so when you start asking people questions, it's possible that if they're more of an influencer type of personality, they don't really care about data. All they care about is how it feels. Okay. A high D person is going to want some data, but they're also going to be very specific about their wants. And so this is going to be your, responsibility when you're talking to somebody, is what kind of emotion do they feel? Ask these certain questions. Ask them about past experiences. Have you ever bought a home before? No. Okay. What about when you first rented a place? Tell me about the property that you currently live in. What are the things that you like about that property that you currently live in? Because you're going to be using those things, right? That emotion that they have, to to start this journey with them. And also, you want to talk to about their successes. So let's say it is somebody that has bought a home before. So of course you want to ask what that experience was like. To have them tell you a story. Excuse me. Because again, if they tell you that they didn't have a very good experience, and that they saw, 100 homes, you're going to ask them, you know, so that's something that you disliked. We're going to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Okay. And then if you start to see that they're not experiencing something that they like, you're going to know about that story that they told you so that you can work with, again, that emotional journey that they're on. So I hope this is really connecting with you because I I really believe that storytelling and understanding and getting into the minds of your buyer or seller is so, so important. And another big thing is listening, right? If you're always telling your stories and you're not asking questions, then you're never really going to be able to figure out what it is that are the goals or the fears or the desires of your client, right? I have seen so many agents or met agents that they just talk the whole time about themselves and they do this whole spiel and presentation and they're not connecting. They're not connecting with their buyer seller because they have just done this whole presentation instead of a consultation. A consultation's where you're going to be asking certain questions. You're going to be finding out their personalities, like I was saying, so that you can adapt to this client, what their fears are. The high S person is somebody that doesn't like change. And they're telling you that they're about to leave the house that they've lived in for 25 years and they're moving. This is going to be difficult, right? So you want to have that care. You want to have that emotion that they're experiencing and tell those stories. Help them to feel better about what they're doing because again, high S does not like change at all. And so you're going to be almost like their therapist when you're trying to help them with that, their goals. So I always feel like as a real estate agent, we have so many different responsibilities. So when it comes to the storytelling or the listening is so, so important because you can start to, and I take notes. I mean, I always take notes because I work with so many different clients, and you just want to make sure that with those notes that you are following along with their personality. And so again, that personalized communication, whenever you respond to them, I always ask them, are you okay with me texting you, or would you rather me make phone calls to you? And you wouldn't believe how many people say they would prefer a phone call. Now, if you're not listening and you don't hear that, and they tell you that they prefer phone calls and you're constantly texting or emailing them, they're going to get frustrated, right? So, again, try to understand by listening, asking questions, and that's going to put you in a better trust situation. Empathy. So there's a difference between, empathy and sympathy. Empathy is sort of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And what does that feel like to be this buyer or this seller? Now, when you use this, that again is where the story and sharing stories and asking, how does this feel? Because a lot of times people have this fear of, their money. Okay, so it's getting, they're going to get a loan and they're going through all of this stuff with the loan and they're getting so frustrated with the lender because the lender is like asking all these crazy questions. And so you want to be that person where you can guide them and ask them, how they're feeling about this process. Because if you control the process and they control the decisions, then you're putting yourself in that position of helping them through that process and doing it with compassion, right? The last thing you want is if they're yelling at you, because I've said this before, sellers are yellers, buyers are liars. I know that sounds funny because buyers will tell you certain things that they want in a house, and then they end up being very frustrated because they really don't know what they want, and you're going to have to be that person to help them. So again, lead with understanding, have that mindset of, you know, I understand how hard this is, and maybe share a story that you've personally had, or share a story that you've had of another buyer that has gone through this and they made it through. And just that empathy aspect of it is going to help them with their decision making. Again, like I said, you control the process of this whole thing from start to finish. You control this process, right? There's going to be things that are going to get outside of the process. You want to bring it back in. And with that experience that you have, and with the asking of the questions and listening and having empathy and compassion, you're going to be able to lead them to a good closing, whether it was a tough situation, with the inspections, or tough situation with the sellers. If they get upset and they're yelling or they're crying or whatever that is, you need to stay strong in your position of you have control of the process. Okay? Have that empathy about what they're going through, but at the same time, you know, don't go and start dissing the seller or dissing the buyer agent. Stay in that neutral position so that you can guide them without making that process any harder for them. And again, when it comes to different platforms, again, I want you to start looking at those stories, the short form stories that are on Instagram. Um, the use Facebook and LinkedIn for longer type content, but when you have the short stories for Instagram, usually they could be like a photo, and you add some, we have this Pro Canva at EXP now that is so great for you to be able to make stories. And you also want to carry a cohesive brand narrative about, so that's where I say, your logo is very important. The description of who you are. I want you to go back and look at everything that you have online, and read about yourself. Plug yourself, put your name in there, Google your name, do Chat GPT. I did Chat GPT on myself, and it was crazy. It wrote like this wonderful, it took all of this stuff from all over, and I just asked it. I said, you know, tell me a little bit about the realtor Monica Graves, and uh, about how she works in real estate. And it just gave like this great story. And so I said, okay, well, this is what I'm going to use now on my LinkedIn profile, my Facebook profile, because if and if it says something that you don't like, then you got to find out why it's saying that about who you are, right? Because somebody might have posted some things, and you want to change that narrative about who you are out there, because what do you think people are looking at, right? They're Googling you or asking Chat GPT about you, and you just want to make sure that that comes across what your narrative is, and you want to make sure that it's consistent and that it reinforces trust. And that way, when people are reading about you, they're going to want to work with you. So here it is, your story, your success for 2026 is, I want you to make sure that you understand that storytelling is a service. Okay, it's not just a marketing tactic. Storytelling about who you are, about your listings, about your company, about your brand, about who you are. It's going to help people build trust, and it's going to attract more people. It's going to help you sell more homes. Every single transaction has a story. And that's why I love real estate so much, is because every client's different. Every home is different. Every transaction is different. So write those stories down, help you to remember those stories so that you can use them when you're working with someone else, because there will sort of be a match. I remember I was doing a class like this on storytelling, and I remember that I sold a house 3 different times, and it was different every single time. That every transaction with the same house was different because the buyers were different, the sellers ended up being different, and and the house stayed the same, but it was different in the aspect of the way people furnished it. It was different even though the location was the same, they ended up doing different things with the yard. So I just want you to understand that you want to make your story very impactful. Who you are, the sellers that you're working with, the buyers you're working with, the homes that you're working with, they all have a story. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this, because it was a little bit different on a Mindset Monday, but I just wanted you to get that aspect of, you need to go out there and you need to have the most positive mindset there is about the job that you are doing, and feel that enthusiasm for who you are. And I promise, when you're telling stories, they're going to sound amazing and people are going to be drawn to you. And so let's make 2026 a great year on storytelling. Okay? So I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next time on Mindset Monday.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.